Welcome to the Intuitive Eating and Body Positivity podcast. I'm Terry and I'll be talking about all things intuitive eating, body positivity and health at every size, and shaking off weight stigma, diet culture and food rules so that we can all have a better relationship with food and our bodies. It's December. It's nearly Christmas. It's so exciting. I was going to start with my tale of woe for the week. I was going to tell you all about how my car went in for an MOT and the outcome of that. And I was going to tell you about the problem with my tooth. And then I thought, no, you don't come here to have me moan and groan at you. So I'm not going to tell you how my tooth has broken. And I can now eat on only one side of my mouth for fear of the rest of my tooth falling off. And I'm also not going to tell you about how I had my MOT on the car this week. And it's come back in a worse state than I can imagine. Because there's a lot that needs doing and far more than is worth spending on the car. I'm not going to tell you about that. No, because you did not come here for the misery that is things going wrong in my life this week. No, let's only talk about good things. The decorations go up this week. It's the first weekend in December. First Sunday of December is when our decorations go up in our house. The tree and all the loveliness that is the twinkly stuff. And, I love Christmas. I love Christmas and it's nearly here now. I haven't really started my shopping though. Not really, and I'm usually pretty much done by now, so I've still got quite a lot of that to do. But that's okay. Just need to make a list and go get it, right? What kind of a Christmas shopper are you? Are you one that leaves it to the last minute? Does it on the last day before Christmas? The last day that the shops are open? Or are you done by now? Have you had it done since, January? I'm usually somewhere in the middle. I usually start seriously looking at it in November time. But if I see things through the year, kind of June, July onwards, then I might pick things up. But yeah, I'm usually far more closer to being finished than I am at the moment. But there you go. That's all good. Do you know what we always used to have at Christmas when I was little? Fried chips. And by that, I mean deep fried chips. We grew up in a household where we didn't eat very much fried food. And when we had chips, it was oven chips. So when Christmas came round, my dad would always say that he wanted proper deep fried chips. Just once a year, that's all he wanted. So that would happen. And do you know what? I never really enjoyed them that much. I don't really enjoy deep fried foods or, any real greasy fried foods. Even if they're well drained, even if they're not greasy on the plate. And I think my preference to not have fried foods comes from when I was younger. I think my body is just used to eating in that way and used to eating that type of food. So definitely no judgment if you like to have fried foods. It's just the way I've grown up. It's just my taste preferences. And then I was thinking about other food that I used to like or dislike when I was growing up. You know what really sticks in my head? Tomato soup. So my nan used to make tomato soup. Sometimes I think she made it from scratch. Sometimes I think it was just out of a tin. But either way, the house used to be filled with the scent of tomato soup. My nan was quite a big home cook, so she used to make marmalades and things like that. So there would be this giant pan of something on the hob, cooking something like marmalades and things like that. And she used to make these big things of tomato soup, and so the house would smell of it. And I can't bear it. To this day, I cannot bear the smell of tomato soup. I don't really like tomato flavoured things. I don't like things that have got a tomato base. So I don't really like tomatoey pastas, that sort of thing. I just don't like tomatoey things. I do like tomatoes, but I think tomatoey things don't really taste the same as if you were eating a tomato. Do you know what I mean? So anyway, the smell of this tomato soup rings deep in my memory. I can feel it in the bridge of my nose when I think about the smell of tomato soup, or if I think about tomato soup, it just brings back this memory. It brings back the actual smell. I can feel it. And that's the power of childhood food memories. So everything we do, everything we eat, everything we hear around food shapes our preferences as we grow older. Maybe I was never destined to like tomato soup. Maybe I was never going to like it because that was my taste preferences. But it is also heavily ingrained in this memory of my nan making tomato soup and the smell of it and how I disliked it. So now I don't like tomato soup and I don't like tomatoey things. So that's what I want to talk about really in this episode. That's what I want to talk about. The links to childhood memories, the links to food as a child. So this is going to be heavily based around my memories because I don't know what your memories are, do I? I don't know what your preferences are and whether they link back to childhood stuff. But I'm going to go through some memories that resonate with me from my childhood and how they affect me now. And then hopefully you'll see the link is strong. So there's a tomato soup. And I was thinking about it and I was like, what else do I remember from childhood? I've got quite a list, it turns out. I sat and wrote this list and it took me all of about 5 minutes once I got my head into it. But there's quite a lot there. So soggy bread. Oh, gross. You know, like if bread has been sat in some sauce for too long. Gross. You know, if it's been in soup for too long. Or, you know, if you're having beans on toast, for example, and the beans have been on top of the toast for too long. No, don't like it. Oh, and the absolute worst, and this is the one that brings back the memory so quickest, is if you are washing up in the sink and there was a bit of bread on a plate or something and it's floating around in the water. Oh, gross. So guess what? Because my mum had a real issue with soggy bread, I have a real issue with soggy bread. Ugh, I mean, I don't know why you would like soggy bread. But also, this means that I don't like bread puddings and summer puddings and things like that because they are bread-based and the bread has been soaked and they go this weird soggy consistency. Oh, God, I don't like it. Another thing my mum was adamant on was you don't mix milk. Now, I don't know whether this is a sensible thing or not. It probably is because you don't want to mix milk that's been open for a few days with really fresh milk, right? I get that. But my mum was so particular about the milk and whether she thought it was off or not and how often she would smell it, that sort of thing, means that I adopted some of those habits. So I now can tell when milk is on the turn. On the turn. Do you know that? Do you know that saying? When it's not off, but it's not fresh. It's just about to go. I can smell that a mile off. I know that when that's in tea. I know if it's on my cereal. I don't drink glasses of milk as a habit, so that wouldn't, be apparent. But I can tell if milk is not fresh anymore. I don't like milkshakes really, because for me it tastes like gone off milk a little bit. It just tastes like funny milk. So I'm really funny about milk, really, really funny. And that's something from my childhood. That's something that I picked up from what my mum used to do. I mean, that's not a bad thing, is it? No one wants to drink gone off milk. But it also means that I can't really have things like full fat milk. So I like semi-skimmed milk. In my house, though, we grew up having full skimmed milk. God, It's just like water, isn't it? It's just water. I like semi-skim milk. I don't like full-fat milk because to me, it tastes like it's almost gone off. And malted milk biscuits. Have you had those? Can't eat those. They taste like gone off milk. Next time you have one of those biscuits, you tell me, does it or does it not taste like gone off milk? Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? What else? We didn't have takeaways and we didn't really eat out when I was younger. I don't know why that is. I think the preference was to stay at home. We lived with my nan, so she was a really good home cook. My mum was a good cook, but my nan used to do a lot of the cooking. I've no doubt that there was probably a money issue there, as not an issue, but, a consideration for how much it would cost to take 5 of us out for food or whatever. Every now and again, we would have a takeaway. Every now and again, we would have chips or we'd have a Chinese. So takeaways definitely weren't the norm in our house. I don't know if that's affected me at all because I was never really bothered by it. I was never really excited by takeaways. I used to really enjoy them, but it wasn't one of those things where all of a sudden there was a takeaway, so I had to eat it all or have it all. So I don't know, but it was just a memory that came to mind when I was thinking about food. Yeah, we didn't really eat out and we didn't really have takeaways. Sundays were Sunday roast day. We always had a roast on a Sunday. I mean, that's a nice thing, isn't it? It's an awful lot of work, isn't it, a roast dinner? Certainly not something I've brought into adulthood, the roast on a Sunday. I know people that do. I know people that every Sunday without fail, there is a joint of meat going in the oven, there is all the veg and all of that, and it's proper Sunday lunch. We don't tend to do that. But we also don't mind doing that sort of thing in the week either, if one of us can be bothered or we've got time. So the Sunday roast thing, whereas it's a nice memory, it didn't really affect how I eat now, I don't think. But for you, it might be that you've carried that tradition on. If you ate Sunday roasts without fail growing up and Sunday roast is Sunday roast day, then that might be something that you've picked up from when you were a child. Tell you what else happened on a Sunday. Toasted sandwiches. I remember Sunday was get ready for school day. So for those of you who are listening to this outside of the UK, you might not get the reference here, but Sunday evening, there used to be Last of the Summer Wine, the Antiques Roadshow. I think Lovejoy and possibly Bergerac were Sunday programmes. And when these TV programmes came on the TV, it was like, now it's Sunday evening. Now we're getting ready to go to school on Monday. I still have that Sunday evening feeling to a degree, because Sunday evenings is now we're getting ready for work tomorrow. But Sunday evenings, it was have a bath, put your pajamas on, get your stuff ready for school, and then have tea. And that was going to be, because we'd obviously had Sunday roast in the day, it was going to be something like a toasted sandwich. And that feels very wintry to me when I think of toasted sandwiches. And we used to have in them, I'm just thinking of which my favourite would be. I don't know what my favourite is. Cheese and pickle. But you've got to be careful there because the pickle is hotter than hell. That is like lava in the middle of a sandwich when it's been in a sandwich toaster. Oh, God, that's so hot. The number of times I burnt my mouth on a cheese and pickle sandwich. Cheese and beans. That's a good one. Tried that. Corned beef in a toasted sandwich. Have you tried that? Corned beef and pickle I used to have. That was good. Good old cheese and ham. That's a good toasted sandwich. And I remember one sandwich never felt like enough because I enjoyed it so much. I was always sad to see the end of a tomato. What? End of a toasted sandwich. I was always really sad to come to the end of my sandwich. And I still feel like that now when I have toasted sandwiches. I still really love them. And I still feel really sad when I've finished one because I love them so much. But that was always Sunday evening, toasted sandwiches. They were good. I remember sitting there, pajamas, hair wet from the bath, and having these toasted sandwiches sat in the kitchen. Nice. Sandwiches, though. Sandwiches in our house were a funny affair because most of the time my mum was on a diet. So quite often the bread was chosen to suit that. Now, not for toasted sandwiches, might I add, because rubbish Weight Watchers bread or Nimble bread, do you remember Nimble bread? That made for a rubbish toasted sandwich. But we used to end up having this rubbish bread because my mum was on a diet. Now, that could quite possibly have affected my preference for bread because this links into wider family. So we used to have rubbish bread in our house. And then in the holidays, I used to go and stay with my nan while my mum was at work, and my other nan. We used to go to her house, and she, every morning, used to say, can you go round to the bakery for me and get my loaf of bread? Because, well, not every morning, but she would get fresh bread from the bakery, whereas my mum would buy horrible bread from the supermarket. So we would run round to the bakery, which was literally round the corner, with however much money it cost. And this loaf of bread would be given, wrapped in paper, and we would carry it back to the house. And on the way back to the house, it might pick a little corner off the bread, just a little bit. Enough that it wouldn't be noticed, but enough that it would give me the flavour of the bread. Because I knew that when I got that bread to the house, it was not for me. It was for my granddad. And my nan would make him the best toast. She would cut big slices, doorsteps of bread. And they would go under the grill. They weren't going in the toaster. They were going under the actual grill. So these slices of toast were huge. And they went under the grill. And then she did this weird thing. I don't know if this happens anywhere else. But she would take it out of the grill when it was ready, put it on the board, and then she would press it down with her hands. Like almost lean on it to flatten it. And then she would butter it. And it was proper butter. And again, in our house, we had nasty margarine because my mum was on a diet. And this toast smelled amazing. And what did I not have in my house? Really nice toast and butter. What did I not have also in my nan's house but could see and smell? Really nice toast with butter. So I think that may be where my love of bread and toast stems from. Those times. Because also I have another memory of going to my cousin's house and being there and my uncle saying, right, do you want some toast? Yeah. So he made us some toast. And then while we were sat eating it, he was like, do you want some more toast? Yes, please. So he made us some more toast. And this one day, we just kept eating the toast. We must have got through, well, it feels like we must have got through a loaf of bread, but we can't possibly have done that. So we must have got through half a loaf of bread. We must have done because he was like, just kept it coming. He just kept the toast coming. Buttery toast, buttery toast, buttery toast. Oh, I loved it so much. So I think that's where my love of bread comes from. And my, I don't know what the word is really, but my real desire to have thick bread, white bread, proper bread, from a bakery, that kind of bread, the stuff you slice yourself, and butter and lots of it. So I really think that's where that is driven from. So that's interesting, isn't it? We also had sweets very rarely in our house. We never had sweets in the house. We used to go to town on a Saturday morning. Mum would always drag us to town to do whatever she needed to do. We'd go to the post office. We'd go to some shops. We just got dragged here, there and everywhere, to get various different things. Went to the grocers for the veg, that sort of thing. And we sometimes got sweets while we were in town. There was a sweet stall in the market. It was a bit of a pick and mix type thing, but it was a nice one where they would, not like a big pick and mix stand, but like a counter, and you would choose and you would say, I'll have a few of those, please, and have a few of those, please. And they would scoop them up and put them in the little bags for you. So we would have them every now and again, but not very often. And there wasn't an awful lot of sweet stuff in our house. Again, because I think my mum was on a diet, so she just didn't buy it. We had kind of cereal bars and snack bars to go in lunch boxes and things like that, but they were for lunch boxes. They were not for eating in the middle of the afternoon, for example. And when I got home from school, I used to be really hungry. And what is the message that you get? Your tea won't be long, so you can't eat. But I'm like, I'm hungry now. I'm really hungry now. Because lunchtime was like 4 hours ago. And I was hungry. But Mum obviously thought if I ate then, it would spoil my tea and I wouldn't eat my meal. Well, did she not know me? I always ate my tea. But that was the message in our house. You just wait. And on the odd occasion, she would say, right, well, you can have a couple of biscuits. Meaning out of a packet of biscuits, not like a bar of something. She would say, have a couple of biscuits. And I remember going through a phase where we would have honey on digestive biscuits. Have you ever had that? It is so good. Honey spread on top of digestive biscuits. So lovely. So sweet. So sweet. And she would say, have two. And I would obviously try and push it and have another one when she wasn't looking. Or I would sneak biscuits from the tin as I was going through the kitchen, knowing that she was upstairs or in the front room, because you had to go through our kitchen to go to the toilet, for example. So I would try and very quietly sneak biscuits out the tin as I was going through. And I think that's because there was just no access to sweet stuff in our house. So it became a novelty. It became something I wanted. And I've got quite an I've got a very addictive personality. I've got, I'm pretty all or nothing with stuff. So I do, if I'm restricted from having something, want it. And then when I've got it, I want more of it. That's my personality. So knowing that those biscuits were in the tin, knowing that I was hungry, knowing that I wanted something, knowing that I wanted something sweet, because we don't have much sweet stuff, that tin was always on my mind. And I would do sneaky things to try and get the biscuits out the tin. I was quite successful on many occasions. Other times, not so much, and then I got told off. But we also didn't really have pudding after tea. We didn't have dessert. That was only every now and again. And so when we did have it, it was a treat. It was special. It was, and I don't mean special as in, let's all sit around and wonder at this marvellous dessert. Not that kind of special. But it just meant that because it didn't happen very much in our house, it was the whole binge restrict thing, It was you never get it and now you've got access to it. So that is really what you want and what you want more of. I remember having things like baked apples. Did you ever have baked apples? So the apples, and then they had like stewed fruit in the middle of them as well. They'd be stuffed with raisins and cinnamon and sugar and things like that. Not really my cup of tea, but oh my God, lovely with custard. All the custard in all the land. We didn't have puddings very often. So, again, That's a sweet thing. So there was quite a lack of sweet stuff in our house. And now I have an incredibly sweet tooth. The access we had to sugar actually was not a message in our house that you didn't eat sugar, right? That's not the way it went. It was definitely not a message that you should not eat sweet things because it's bad for you. There was never that message. It just wasn't available. And the only time that we really got access to the sugar and sugary things was when we had breakfast cereal. So where is my preference? Sugary cereal, sweet cereal, that sort of thing. And when it came to things like Weetabix, I would always love to put loads of sugar on it. I still do. When it was cornflakes, I would love to put loads of sugar on it. I still do. I used to have a cereal called Ready Break, which was like an instant porridge. What did I always put on the top of there? Sugar and lots of it. So for me, the restriction and then the binge response was very apparent from a very young age in things like that. And to this day, I still have those preferences. When I have Weetabix, which I do quite often in the winter, when I have Weetabix, I want loads of sugar on it. When I have porridge, actual porridge, I want loads of sugar on it. And I love it when that sugar starts to melt because the food is hot, you know? That's all coming from when I was little. I absolutely know that. I went and stayed at an aunt's for a week once in the holidays when I was, I don't know how old I was, probably late primary school age. And the first evening, she says, "Would you like an ice cream?" And I was like, "Oh, yes, please. That'd be lovely. Thanks." So out come the cornettos. And I was like, this is the best. I'm at my aunt's. I'm getting to stay up late. And now we're eating ice cream. That's not something that we really had much of either in the house, ice cream. And then the next night, she said, "Do you want an ice cream?" And in my head, I didn't really want to say yes because I was almost in a state of, well, I had one yesterday. So should I say yes today? Because I had one yesterday. Needless to say, my uncle had one. And that for me was free rein to say, yes, please. We had an ice cream every night. This blew my mind as a small child because that was not a behaviour that was okay in our house. We didn't have ice cream every day in our house. So that was then something that I felt a little bit guilty for, almost. I almost felt guilty for saying yes and having this ice cream. And I also remember feeling like I had to be super grateful for it. Now, I didn't grow up in a house where I was made to feel guilty for having food or that I had to earn my food. There wasn't food scarcity in the respect of a lack of availability of food or a lack of money in the house, that sort of thing. I did have the scarcity in as much as certain foods were not bought and put in the house. So then to go to my aunt's, there was almost this guilt for saying yes to having this ice cream every evening. I didn't recognise it as guilt then, obviously, but now when I think back to it, I'm like, oh, interesting. Interesting, isn't it? And then, of course, there is the infamous, you can't leave the table until you've finished everything on your plate. This is a common story, right? Are you one of those people that grew up in a house where you had to sit at the table until you'd finished your dinner? You were not allowed to have anything else until you had finished everything on your plate. Whether you were hungry or not, whether you liked it or not, whether you fancied it that day or not, whether you liked it or not, you ate everything on your plate. And I remember so many meals that were just miserable because I didn't want to eat anymore. See, I was quite good at regulating my food when I was let do it. I remember going to the... oh, God, grossness coming up, I warn you. I remember one night eating something like a stew, and it had beef in it, and I had this piece of beef. And still to this day, my parents joke about this. Well, my dad, because my mum isn't here, but he, it's still a memory that the meat was chewy, right? And I sat and I chewed this piece of meat. Oh, God, it felt like an eternity. And I remember feeling really upset about this. And I was like, I cannot swallow this piece of food. I can't swallow this piece of meat. And in the end, I snuck off to the toilet and I spat it in the toilet. But I'd sat there for ages trying to eat this piece of meat. And what I should have done is just taken it out and put it on my plate. But then I'd have been told off for doing that. But the whole meal, I remember not enjoying it. And I remember thinking, the meat in this is not very nice. I don't like it. And I wasn't a big lover of stews when I was a child then anyway. I do now. I really like them. But I wasn't a big lover of that food then. And it was a little bit traumatizing, I'm not going to lie. So now the memories of sit there until you finished your dinner are strong. Are really strong. Along with threats of, you'll have to eat this tomorrow if you don't eat it today. Is that a familiar one for you as well? Well, if you don't eat it today, you'll have to eat it tomorrow because you're not wasting it. And I don't think that ever happened. I don't remember that ever happening. But the threat was there, and that lives in my memory rent-free. So it's interesting, isn't it? Because I brought that messaging into my upbringing of my children until I knew better. I used to expect them to eat all their food. I used to say similar things like, well, if I didn't think you should eat it, I wouldn't have put it on your plate. Or if you eat that much of that, then you can leave that. Have you done that as well? Have you done that with your own kids? All right, fine, let's bargain. So if you eat this, scrapes some food to one side of the plate, then you can leave this, scrapes food to the other side of the plate. And that is a message that I am keen to never, ever use again with anybody in any way, shape or form, because kids are so intuitive in their eating. Kids are so tuned in to what they do want to eat, don't want to eat, how much they need to eat, that sort of thing. And if you're not hungry, eating is not pleasurable. So never again will I force a child to eat all the food that's on their plate. But, you live and learn. And I do feel bad, but I don't feel guilty because everything we do as parents, for the vast majority of parents, everything is in the best interest of the child. So I would like to see children eat the food that's put on their plate because I think the parents on the whole do have an understanding of how much they can eat, what sort of overall balance of foods they've been eating as a whole, that sort of thing, and will make choices to make sure that they are getting adequate nutrition, that sort of thing. A nice mix of food, enough energy, that sort of thing. But we can let kids regulate themselves in that respect. We really can. So on the whole, when I look back, my memories around foods when I was small really have shaped a lot of the behaviours around the way I eat now. And that might be the same for you. So the whole point of this episode is for me to point this out to you and say, if you reflect back on your childhood memories with food and how you behave around food now, if you've got some kind of disordered eating patterns, some kind of bad relationship with certain foods, there might be reasons for that, other than the restriction in adulthood, other than the dieting. It might be that there are childhood memories that have shaped this behaviour for you. And that's not to say it can't be undone. And that's not to say that you wouldn't necessarily have some of these preferences anyway. I'm probably always going to have had a sweet tooth. I don't think that that is only the case because of how I did or didn't have access to sweet food when I was younger. But you can definitely see a link between adulthood and childhood. So I guess what I want to say is don't beat yourself up about these things. You know, you can put some rationale to the way that you behave around food. And when you understand it, you can change it. You know, when you start to understand things like that, you can have some compassion for how you're eating and for your thoughts behind food and how you go about changing them. So, yeah, bit of a walk down memory lane today. Did you like it? Was that good? If you're listening in real time, as in if you're listening in December, on my Instagram and in the Facebook group at the moment, there is a month of messages going on. I am putting a new intuitive eating and body confidence message up every day of December, and it's to help you to navigate Christmas time and all the festive food and all the Christmas body messages that you're getting, you know, how you should or shouldn't eat, you know, the Christmas chocolates and the mince pies and that sort of thing. Or how you're feeling about getting dressed up for Christmas parties, that sort of thing. If that's worrying you a little bit, then come and follow on Instagram or join the Facebook group and have a look at those posts, because every day there's a new message to help you to feel more confident around food and to feel better about your body, the way you look, the way you feel at Christmas, that sort of thing. So come and join the group or come and follow me on Instagram. That'd be lovely. Right, I'm off to go and put up my decorations. I'm going to put the tree up. Well, my husband will put the tree up and then I will decorate it. And yes, I will rearrange the baubles and everything sparkly that goes along with it. So nice afternoon ahead. I hope you're doing something lovely with your week. I hope you are getting all Christmassy and feeling lovely about it. And have a cozy, lovely, warm rest of your day.